Okay, a couple of issues. One, actually, somebody from the audience mentioned this to me, and I thought, wow, that's a really good point. And so it didn't quite come through the website. I guess this is outside the bounds of our Robert's rules here for tonight, but it was such a good one, I thought I'd bring it up. He said, we've been talking about issues here all night, and nobody's been talking about the core values that underlie those issues. The vision that animates them, the sense of what this country is all about that causes these issues to come into being and causes us to feel passionate about them. Nobody's talking about the stories behind these issues and how America has been and how it's become and how it could be. And so I'm in the context of that frame, of the values frame, of our values as progressives. Let's talk a little bit about the candidates, because that's the context of this evening. And I'm just curious, which candidates in your minds most clearly communicate the values that I think probably all of us on this stage and all of us in this room collectively share in greater or lesser degree broadly, and which don't, and how do we do how do we do that? And then from there I want to segue into strategy.
I'll start with that one. I don't think there should be an issue about Democrats and values. We're the ones that brought values into the political system. The fact that the Republicans have co-opted or stolen that issue, that's something that just galls the hell out of me. When they talk about they're the party of values, what values? So and I think the reason, yeah, really. I think the reason Democrats...
They refer to the family values of the Senator Hooker Vitter that wears the diapers.
Yeah, right.
That guy.
I think the reason that Democrats are reluctant to talk about values first, when they do talk about it, it sometimes sounds so fakey, so forced, because it's not something that Democrats need to say, well, this is an aspect of me. I think by definition, it's an aspect of Democrats. And I don't see any Democratic candidate who's ever been real good at talking about the values that should be common to this country.
Actually, there's one that comes to mind immediately, and it's FDR. I mean,
I thought
his
you meant
for freedom speech is,
I thought you meant in this century.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be...
You know entirely too much about history, Tom.
It shouldn't be an issue. It shouldn't be an issue. I don't see any Democratic candidate who is real good at that. They have coaches that say, okay, now you got to go out there and tell them that you go to church.
Right.
Or you got to go out there and say you don't kick your dog. I don't know what a Democratic... Look what happened with Al Gore's son. There's some problems there that exist in so many families.
Yeah, but he was driving a Prius.
He's driving a Prius.
So.
Well, that cancels about 80% of it. So
does that get him a pardon in a Democratic administration?
Values should be a given with Democratic candidates.
Yeah.
You know, I want to combine strategy and values here because it's part of the same problem that the Democrats have on every issue, which is they accept the Republican frame. So when they say, hey, you know, how are you on values? They go, okay, well, let me tell you about abortion, or let me tell you about gay rights, or let me tell you about... No. I said values, okay? I didn't say Republican values. I said values, okay? So they should be talking about their values, our values, American values. So when they bring up the issue of family, don't talk about gay Americans. I don't have any problem if you do, and that's a separate issue, though, because when Republicans talk about families, they don't talk about families. They talk about, you know, oh, I'm against gay marriage, or I'm against gay this, or I'm against gay that. So why are you accepting their frame? Don't accept their frame. Say, I care about values because I want to give health care to everybody, okay? That's a value, okay? I want to give a decent living wage to everybody. That's a value, okay? I want to make sure that families can spend time together and mothers can take time off after they have a baby. That's family values. So don't answer it in their way, answer it in your way.
This guy used to be a Republican. You believe that?
So which means that hope springs eternal, right?
Yeah. Well, they lost me, and they lost a lot of the country. They don't understand it. They think that we're as evil as they are. But we're not. We were decent Americans who thought, you know what, limited government, et cetera, and there were some things that we believed in, right? But they've sold all those out. Limited government, my ass. Okay? I mean, they spend more than anybody else. We just had Senator Conrad on the show explaining in the last 6 years, they increased spending by 50%. And what did we get for it? War. That's it. I mean, who's in favor of those values? Nobody.
You know,
I think we lack. I think one thing. I'm sorry, Stephanie. I think one thing that one reason why Barack Obama appeals to so many people is I think he speaks in a manner that, I mean, you know, I don't want to quote his own book, but there is a degree of hope. There's a connection, and he doesn't seem much of the time, not all the time, to me anyway, to talk like a regular politician. But that said, they all talk too much like politicians. There is an inauthenticity of everyone. John Edwards did great with this crowd. He sounds inauthentic to me a lot of the time. Hillary, no question. Even Barack Obama, and so on down the line. To look back to a different time, you know, in like 1965 or 1966, when Bobby Kennedy was in the Senate, there had been a coup in Brazil. And obviously a coup backed by the CIA. Shocking. And what do you know? A democratically elected government was overthrown there in Brazil. And Bobby Kennedy went to the, I think it was 64 actually, just after, it must have been 65, he was elected in 64. And he goes to the State Department, talks to the Latin American desk guy there, and he says, I'm going to Latin America, I'm going to be in Brazil. What do, you know, what's the latest on this? What should I say? And the Latin American director checks some notes at the State Department, and he says something, I'm paraphrasing, he says something like, well, we are saddened that a great power has momentarily lost its way. We are convinced that the people of Brazil, blah, blah, blah. And Bobby cut him off and says, hey, I don't talk that way. And every politician talks that way now. And, you know, granted, I mean, it's been, 39 years since he was assassinated. But, I mean, I crave, and I think many people do here, for a guy like Bobby Kennedy who talks like Bobby Kennedy because he meant it. He meant it, he believed it, and he was so awkward. You know, he had a debate in 1967, I think, a televised debate with Ronald Reagan, and he got his ass kicked because Reagan was fantastic on television, and Bobby Kennedy had no idea what to say, how to sound sort of political at that point in his career, because he'd seen enough tragedy that I don't think he cared anymore. But now everything is so manufactured that I think why people jumped on to John McCain in 2000, the first sign that we get a politician sounding authentic, sounding real, talking about the things that people are talking about tonight, I think that will help that politician enormously.
You know,
Ben, sorry.
Go ahead.
You know, Ben, I think but that's why I think people connected with Obama at the last convention, because
yes.
You're right, he sounded authentic to when, you know, you remember you know, we got some gay friends in the red states and we worship an awesome God in the blue states. And, you know, I stopped breathing. I was like, a guy that's actually going to talk about shit that's actually in the Bible. Right. Do you know what I mean? And I mean, it seems to me, you know, Cenk, you're right. It's like the Republican Party today, it's become gay bashing. That's all I can figure out what their moral values mean. You know, I mean, speaking of Republicans, you know I was abandoned by wolves and raised by Republicans, right? But, you know, I say it all the time on the radio show, but my dad in Goldwater would be appalled at this Republican Party today. You know, Barry Goldwater, by the time he died, was pro-choice, was pro-gay rights. He used to say about gays in the military, you don't have to be straight, you just have to shoot straight. They would sit around today with the guy with the hooker and the diaper and the guy buying crystal meth from a gay hooker. It was like, what? What do you mean you're the party of moral values, you know? So you're right, it's really reclaiming that issue. That was God.
Dick Cheney has spoken.
Wow. Wow.
And we're going to keep on talking.
That was God giving me the thumbs up.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to weigh in on this if I could. I think that we have to put our issues of the day in historical context, that this neocon, this conservative agenda, this whole movement that turned out to be absolute power started back in the late 70s. And they had a game plan, and they were very disciplined, and they stuck to it.